This program was first broadcast on Canterbury's access media station, Plains FM, and was made with the assistance of New Zealand On Air.
It's time for Emergence News on Plains FM 96.9, citizen-made radio.
Kia ora and welcome to Emergence News. My name is Nigel and in the studio with me today is John. Welcome, John.
Good morning, Nigel.
Great to see you.
Yes, thank you very much. Lovely to be here.
Okay, so this program, Emergence News, is all about Maitreya and the Masters of Wisdom and the return, the emergence of Maitreya. And throughout history, when humanity has reached a major point of crisis, the spiritual hierarchy sends a teacher to show the way forward. The best known of these divine messengers in recent times are Krishna, the Buddha, Confucius, Jesus, and Muhammad. There are also initiates. Now, these are people that are nearing the end of the evolutionary journey, John.
They are part of the team, Nigel, and they are probably the first string. Now, in this evolutionary process, there's spectators, there's people sitting on the bench, and then there's the first string. So you could call Maitreya the coach. Some of his masters will be the first string players, and then the initiates will be the bench players. They'll come on when they're needed. That would be one of my analogies.
It's a good one. It's a good one, especially if you're into sport. You can picture that quite easily. Now, names of initiates are published in 3 volumes of work by Benjamin Creme. Maitreya's Mission, Volume 1 and 2 and 3, and there are lists of initiates. And according to the Master of Wisdom, the Master DK, a disciple or an initiate is known by their control of their environment around them. What does that mean, John?
When we talk about initiations, there's 5 planetary initiations. The first one is that we learn to manage our astral or emotional nature. The second one is the first initiation is you learn to control
the physical vehicle.
Body, the physical vehicle, right? The physical desires. The second initiation is you are learning to control and master the emotional. The third one is you're managing the mental apparatus. So, and Cream has talked about by the time you're 3, so you're over the third initiation, 3+, you're kind of ensouled. You're then working in alignment with your soul. And I kind of like the term that anybody over 3.2 is what we'd call a saint, right? I spent a little bit of time with Benjamin Creme, and there was something about him, something coming off him. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I do.
It's a really interesting process.
Powerful cookies.
Yeah, so I think DK is referring to that third initiation onwards. The reason for that is that you can be trusted, right? You're managing your body, you're managing your emotions, you're managing your mind.
You're not out of control.
You've shed glamour and illusion, mostly. You know, these initiations aren't 100%. And you're in control and you're in contact with your soul infused, so that the masters can trust you. So the big jobs go to the 3+. Right.
And the initiate is also recognised by the extent of his or her world service. That's their impact on the environment around them and other human beings.
Yeah, their contribution.
So if you're interested in this list of initiates, try visiting the Share International website and select resources and then books. And in this section, as I said earlier, there are 3 books for sale or available: Maitreya's Missions 1, 2 and 3. And before you purchase any of these books, you can view sample contents.
I love that.
It is, it's great. There's about 50 or 60 pages you can read, and you'll know you'll be quite confident that you want to read that book after that sample. They're great books, actually. So, this is the question we're posing today. Why are initiates important? These are the human beings, as John has just said, that are the workers. They're changing our world. Why? Because humanity is undergoing currently a great spiritual crisis that is focused through the political and economic fields. The crisis can only be resolved by the resolution of our political and economic problems. For example, many of our governments lead nations, their people, as if it is a business, whether in education or healthcare, and we see that here in New Zealand currently. Today, the G7, the 7 richest nations, most industrialised nations, control the economy of the world. It seems unfair, doesn't it? The G7, the 7 richest nations, expect a high standard of living as their prerogative. They see life as supply and demand. So the developed world commandeer and waste 3/4 of the world's food and 83% of all other resources. And the third world, they have to make do with 1/4 of the food supply and just 17% of all other resources. So, why are the initiates important? Because that needs redressing.
Yes.
These are the people who can help shape our future, make new discoveries, and lead our communities. The last phase of the evolutionary process on Earth is covered by 5 expansions of consciousness. And they're called, as you said, John, the 5
initiations.
5 planetary initiations. All the masters of wisdom have taken these 5 initiations.
Yes.
Okay.
And to be called a master, you had to have passed 5, the 5th one. And the 5th one is that mastery of all planetary skills, planetary attributes. And I think it's the start of the process of understanding the logos, the mind of the logos.
And there's a very famous individual who took the 5th initiation at the end of his lifetime. That was Confucius.
A 5th initiation, a
5-degree initiate, a master. Whereas Jesus, for example, it was his following lifetime, wasn't it?
So he was a 4th-degree initiate as Jesus of Nazareth, and his next life he was a 5th-degree initiate.
Apollonius of Tyana. Yeah, and that's an interesting lifetime, isn't it? He spends the last period of his life in North India and
travels widely, and I believe here in the South Pacific.
Yes,
some of the Polynesian peoples have stories of a master that walked among them, and the supposition is it may have been Jesus in his 5th initiation.
Now, before we hear from you a couple of examples of initiates, John. At the end of an age and civilization, there is a breakdown of existing political, economic and social structures. Due to these structures breaking down, they're somewhat crystallized and weakened.
Yes.
And some sections of society begin to respond to the new energy. So as the structures start to dismantle, it's the youth that respond first, isn't it?
It's the energy bath that this planet is swimming through, right? We're a planet that's moving through cosmos. We're part of a solar system that's moving through cosmos. And as we move from location to location, we come in and out of contact with different energies from different star systems, right? And so we have moved out of Pisces, the energy of Pisces in the cosmos that we're moving through, into the energy of Aquarius in the current location in the cosmos where we find ourselves. And it is those incoming energies and the 7 rays of creation that shape our life, that shape our human forms, that shape our planetary forms. That's why things evolve. That's why things go out of evolution, because they've moved out of the sustaining ray structures, energy structures. So that energy change, that energy shift moves energy out of some aspects of our life and into others. And that term that Krem has used is structures that are no longer valid, structures that no longer meet the energetic requirements of our planet and humanity. Crystallize. He says they crystallize, they harden, and they shatter. Right? Because the energy's moved away from them.
So that explains why it's such a dramatic time at the moment.
And that's why he says with such certainty that we are witnessing the collapse of this civilization because it's outdated. It's outmoded because it no longer responds to the energy of creation.
However, there are some people that are responding to the new energies.
And they are the people that are incarnating at the time. One of Krem's,
the youth.
Yeah, the youth. One of Krem's key ideas is that in every age, and we've moved out of an age, the age of Pisces, into this age, the age of Aquarius, because of where we sit in cosmos, that souls incarnate with the skills and race structure for this time. They're the young people. You and I, Nigel, we've got to worry. Are we past our use-by date? Sometimes I feel like it.
So what we're going to do today, John and I, we're going to take a look at some examples of initiates and their point of evolution. And it's quite revealing. For example, Alice Bailey, she was the author of 25 volumes of work.
What an amazing person.
Yeah. She was a 3.2 initiate. So as you said earlier, she was just over that 3-degree initiate.
Trusted, can be trusted.
Yeah, and her husband, Foster Bailey, he was an author as well. And he was a 1.85 initiate.
What? How did they get on?
Well, a 1.85 is still a pretty powerful character.
I would like to think that...
John Lennon was a 1.6.
Was he?
Yeah.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
I'd like to think that to have a compatible relationship, you would need to be around about the same point of evolution, surely.
Well, it'll be interesting to find out in our next life what Paul McCartney was, because his wife, Linda McCartney, was a 1.5. So she was a very influential woman. And of course, she was right at the vanguard of vegetarianism.
Absolutely.
And treating all life forms with value.
With respect. Now, let's explain to our listeners. Remember, one is they are the initiate or the disciple, and I'm not quite sure how to use that term, is managing their physical. And Krem has said the physical body is an animal body, right? And it's very similar to the animal forms on this planet. And its requirements, the thing your animal body wants to do is sleep, eat, rest, and fornicate. So if you've got it doing anything else, you are developing control over that physical vehicle.
You're beginning the process of mastering your vehicle, your physical vehicle.
And Krem has said that's why the vegetarian diet is so important, because as you approach this first initiation, you will have a desire to clean up, to freshen up and clean up the body. And so you'll start some life-affirming physical practices like exercise, like diet, to prepare you for that first initiation.
And you see that in the sporting arena?
Yes.
It's very strong at the moment. And if you look at gyms around the world, there's a lot of people...
Fitness culture is
consciously
on the rise.
or unconsciously tuning up.
Responding to that desire to clean up the physical vehicle to prepare it for this first initiation. So anybody, and the other thing I like about this, anybody that's 1.5 is now starting to polarize mentally, right? So they're moving, they're managing the physical to a degree. They're approaching the point where the second initiation, where they're managing the emotional. And Krem has said there can be...
It's a tough journey.
There's an awful lot of lifetimes between 1 and 2. And I forget the number. I think it might be maybe 13 lifetimes between 1 and 2. I'm not sure, but there's an awful lot of lifetimes before you can manage that emotional.
Because since the Atlantean times, we've been governed by our emotions.
By our emotions, yep.
Okay, just before we go to you, John, I'll just leave you with a thought. The man in black, Johnny Cash,
Yes.
country and western singer, he was a 1.2 initiate. He wrote a poem to the youth of America in 1970. What is truth? He says, I hope to bring peace, but I'm not afraid to get dirty. And I'm not afraid to fight for what I believe in. And I'm not afraid to go where I am uncomfortable, to stand up for love. I'm a dove with claws.
Johnny Cash, I love you. 1.2, that's interesting because I think Elvis was a
0.9.
0.9, right? So hadn't managed, wasn't disciplining the physical vehicle.
George Harrison, 0.9.
George Harrison, 0.9, learnt to meditate, did TM, really started to clean up his life.
Yeah, he didn't have total control over the physical vehicle, though.
No, but still, of those 4 Beatles,
You would have thought he was...
I would have thought between him and John Lennon, they were the thinkers, they were the I don't know, the New Age guys?
Definitely, when you consider they were the two that stayed on in India
Yes.
with the meditation
Yep.
and the guru, whereas both Ringo and Paul, they went home early.
Yep.
So, as you say, your expectations would be that George Harrison would have been a little bit higher.
Yes. Now, that's interesting. Good old George. He was punching above his weight.
But you see, both he and Lennon in the early 70s, post-Beatles era, they released a lot of interesting music regarding spirituality. And, of course, Sgt. Pepper's. Have a listen to Within You, Without You. All right, we'll be back in a moment with Emergence News. John's going to take a look at a couple of high initiates.
I'm going to talk about 2 of my favourites, Benjamin Creme and Krishnamurti. And the reason I'm picking up on particularly Krishnamurti is because he talks a lot about fear. And I wanted to mine some more about fear because on the last program I talked about fear. And I talked about when you start this changing of your life process, when you start to become aware of who you are or who you could be or who you may be, and that process to discover who you are takes a degree of courage. And there is a need to pick up that practice of honesty, sincerity and detachment. And I talked a lot about that over the last previous programs. And that takes some courage. And so you've got to be able to manage your fear. So, in fact, I can use the word courage or maybe even a degree of desperation because you may find yourself in a situation in your life where things are tough. And as our friend Dick Larson has said, and we quote him often, the truth will set you free. So I want to talk about fear. And so once I became familiar with the teachings of Maitreya through Benjamin Creme, I picked up the prayer for the new age. And Benjamin Creme describes the prayer for the new age, and I've got it here, as a tool for treating or dealing with fear, a tool for overcoming fear. So here we go, the prayer for the new age. And it's in the back of Maitreya's Mission, Volume 3. I am the creator of the universe. I am the father and mother of the universe. Everything came from me. Everything shall return to me. Mind, spirit, and body are my temples, for the self to realise in them my supreme being and becoming. Benjamin Creme says, the prayer for the new age given by Maitreya is a great mantram or affirmation with an invocative effect. It will be a powerful tool in the recognition by us that man and God are one, that there is no separation. The I in the mantram is the divine principle behind all creation. The self emanates from and is identical to the divine principle. The most effective way to use this mantram is to say or think the words with focused will, while holding the attention at the Ajna centre between the eyebrows. When the mind grasps the meaning of the concepts and simultaneously the will is brought to bear, these concepts will be activated and the mantra will work. If it is said seriously every day, there will grow inside you a realization of your true self, because it's the ego that uses fear, not the soul. So it's a tool to start overcoming fear.
And also to develop personal responsibility. You are connected with everything.
It is fear that blocks you from doing that, Nigel. So meditation helps because you bring in the soul energy. And it is the vehicle that is fearful. It is the ego that is fearful. The soul does not know fear. Right? So I kind of thought, okay, we're trying to change our lives. We're looking to the initiates. We're looking to teachers to give us some ideas and give us some tools. So I've gone back into Maitreya's Mission, Volume 3, Benjamin Creme. And he's quoting Maitreya, the removal of guilt and fear, the cleansing of the hearts and minds of men. This is what Benjamin Creme has to say. So wrong, so distorted have been the teachings of all the religious groups for centuries that vast numbers live in guilt and fear. 2,000 years of Christian teaching, thousands of years before that of Jewish, Hindu and Buddhist teachings, has filled humanity with fear, superstition and guilt. There is hardly a person in the world today who is untouched by this disease. Everyone is prone to fear. Guilt is the result of fear. If you are taught that God is watching your every action, that practically everything you do from the cradle onwards is wrong, fear and guilt are inevitable. Do not do this, do not do that. That is the naughty, good children, bad children, good Christian children, bad Christian children. Believe this or do not believe it. Good Hindu children do this, bad children do not, and so on and so on. And that constant threat that God will punish you if you do not do what we all believe in. The ability to exploit in religious terms through people's minds and hearts, in economic terms and on the physical plane, politically, through the imposition of power and the manipulation of fear is what tyrants are all about, right? It is the manipulation and use of fear. One of the greatest benefits conferred on the world by the new energies of Maitreya is the growing awareness by humanity of what it needs to do, the growing action of a new group of world servers, showing humanity there is life beyond the control of these tyrannies. And Benjamin Creme talks about the tyranny of economics, the tyranny of religion, and the tyranny of politics. And he says all of those current systems are used to keep us enslaved to fear. Right? Benjamin Creme on fear. He's got some really interesting writings on this.
Because as you've alluded to, there's hardly a human being on the planet that isn't affected or influenced by fear.
We've got to overcome fear, Nigel.
We're riddled with it, aren't we?
Yeah, and it's fear that stops us changing. It's fear that stops that self-investigation. It's fear that stops love. Course in Miracles, which I've talked about previously, posits that humans only express two emotions, love or fear, right? And they're the opposite. Love is the opposite of fear. Fear is the opposite of love. And you can't do them both simultaneously. You're either doing one or the other, right? I kind of like that model. So what does Benjamin Creme say about love? Love is a powerful, active, magnetic force which draws together all the fragmented building blocks of cosmos and holds them together, without which it would fall asunder. Our solar system, the galaxies, would disappear without that magnetic, attracting force which we call love. So there's some really interesting stuff in this Maitreya's Mission. Self-help gives you some big ideas that you can break down into small practices. A tool for overcoming fear is the prayer for the new age.
This is the Emergence News on Plains FM. For more information, go to shareinternational.org.
Hey, John, this is really interesting stuff on the initiates, and there's so much more. We're going to have to dedicate the next program to initiates and continue this conversation because you've still got Krishnamurti to talk about.
Yep.
And you also mentioned it takes some courage, and I've got a couple of examples of that on the next program as we spotlight initiates on Emergence News.
But what they offer us, Nigel, too.
Opportunity.
Yes.
All this information can be found on the Share International website, www.share-international.org, and also don't forget the podcasts, which are available on the Plains FM website.
We welcome your comments, questions and feedback. Please contact us at emergencenews@gmail.com.